Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava Batra, page 76b, top of the page, with the words Ad Shem Yim Shachena O Ad Shish Yiskor Es Mikoma, which means that the rabbis say the buyer does not acquire it until he pulls it or until he rents its place. How then can the opinion of the first Tana of the Braita be ascribed to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi? Excuse me. Lo kasha. Das ist nicht kein kasha. It's not difficult. The Gemara answers lo kasha. It's not a question. It's not kasha. Kan b'shus rabim kan b'simta. This is not difficult here, where Rabbi Yehuda states that a ship is acquired through passing, is referring to a ship situated in a public domain. Since a ship in the public domain cannot be acquired through pulling, which must be performed in a domain that is in one's possession, it is acquired through passing. By contrast, there in the first Braita, the ship is situated in an alleyway, a simta, which is not the public domain. An alleyway? I'm not sure how a ship can meet an alleyway. Maybe it's like in Venice, like where there's water, private waterways, private water alleyway. I don't know. Anyway, which is not the public domain, as both parties have the right to keep their possessions there. A ship in this location must be acquired through pulling. Like in Venice, you have like personal areas that have their own water, water alleyway. Could be. But my okimta. לא ותראית ברשות הרבים ממוספה וחכמים אומרים לא יקון עד שימשכנה ברשות הרבים ממן אגר ותו משיחה ברשות הרבים מייקניה והבאי ורוב אדם רטוב היו מסיר הכהן לרשות הרבים ובחוצר שאין שניהם משיחה כהנה וסימתה ובחוצר שהיא של שניהם The Gemara asks, to what case did you interpret the last Braita to be referring? It was interpreted as referring to the public domain. If so, say the latter clause of the Braita, and the rabbis say that the Braita does not acquire it until he pulls it or he rents its place. The Gemara asks, but if the ship is situated in the public domain, from whom can he rent this place? And furthermore, does pulling in the public domain affect acquisition? But don't Abaya and Rava both say, with regard to different methods of acquisition, passing affects acquisition in the public domain, or in a courtyard that does not belong to either of the parties? Pulling affects acquisition in an alleyway or in a courtyard that belongs to both of the parties, and lifting affects acquisition in every place, even in the seller's domain. My ad sheyim shachena nami dekomar umay ad sheyiskor et mikomag dekaamar hachi kamar ad sheyim shachena v'shus rab lesimta v'im shus ba'alim hi lo kana ad sheyiskor et mikoma. The Gemara answers, what does the Braita mean when it says until he pulls it, and what does it mean when he says until he rents its place? This is what it is saying. The buyer does not acquire the ship until he pulls it from the public domain into an alleyway. And if the ship is located in the domain of some other owner, the buyer does not acquire it until he rents its place from the owner. Lema abaya v'rava damar karabi. Karabi. The Gemara asks, shall we say that Abai and Rava state their opinion in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and not that of the rabbis? The Braita indicates that only Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi maintains that one can acquire ownership by means of passing in the public domain. Amar Ravashi damar le chazak ukinik achanami achar ma'eskinon damar le lech meshorek ukinik. Ravashi said the rabbis agree that it is possible to effect acquisition in the public domain through the act of passing. Therefore, if it is a case where the seller says to him, go take possession and thereby effect acquisition, so too he can effect acquisition through the act of passing. and he does not need to pull it here. The rabbis disagree with Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, as we are dealing with a case where the seller says to him, go pull and thereby effect acquisition of it. Mar Sofer Kapita, Mar Sofer Mareb Makom Hu Loi. Rav Ashi elaborates. One sage, the rabbis, holds that the seller is particular about the method by which the item is acquired, and therefore it can be acquired only through pulling. It can only be acquired through pulling. And one sage, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, holds that the seller is merely indicating the manner to him. In other words, he advises him to use this act of acquisition, but he does not mind if the buyer prefers to perform a different act of acquisition. Rav Papa. The Gemara returns to the issues of acquiring promissory notes. Rav Papa says, Haiman de mezabin le shetor lechavre tzor lemechtav lekonihu v'chol shibun dedebe. Amar ma shemir telishmai tekame derav kano v'yamed le'taimon de kosav le'hachi halo kasav le'hachi lo kani. Rav Papa says one who sells a promissory note to another must write to him, acquire it, and all liens on property that are contained within it. Rav Ashi said, I stated this halacha before Rav Kahana, and I said to him the following analysis. The reason the buyer acquires it is that the seller wrote this for him. This indicates that if he did not write this for him, the buyer does not acquire the monetary rights recorded in the promissory note. Amarli in Letzol Velatzol. Rav Ashi asks, why then did he purchase the promissory note? But does he require it to tie around the mouth of his flask as a stopper? Clearly, he purchased the document for the purpose of collecting the debt recorded on it. Rav Papa said to me, yes, it is possible that he purchased the promissory note in order to tie it around his flask. Since the owner did not transfer ownership of the obligation recorded in the promissory note, the buyer acquires only the paper itself.